All right, we are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. An AI country song has topped the charts in digital sales recently, and we are all asking one question. Is this soulless, formulaic slop fundamentally different than the soulless, formulaic slop written by music industry focus groups? And on a more serious note, the Heartland Institute and Rasmussen just released the results of new polling asking for voters ages 19 to 39 how they view Mamdani, with a majority saying that they view him favorably. His election is already causing people to flee the city and the state, continuing a long-standing trend of exodus from deep blue and crime-ridden parts of the country. Meanwhile, math scores are tanking among young college applicants. And what can we do to fix this? We are going to talk about all of this in episode 519 of the In the Tank podcast. All right, welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lukin, your host. And as always, we also have Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute. And we have Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute.
Hey, hello, Linnea. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Sam. I think you said you had something for us while we introduced you this time.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I know everybody was supposed to be worried about the shutting down of the government and how terrible everything was going to be. And, I'm actually more worried now that the government is going to reopen and do all the terrible things that the government does. And I'm sure a lot of people among our audience feel the same way. So, I was looking like, well, what kind of things can we do, to, sort of make things better for ourselves? And I found out that tomorrow is National Pajamas Day. And so, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cut there. Tomorrow's National Pajamas Day. And we're all supposed to sort of stay home and hang out in our pajamas with our families. And I thought, well, that'd be a very nice thing to do. I think it'd be very peaceful. And, a lot of people say, well, this is probably just invented by the people who make pajamas, which, in fact, it was in 2019. They invented this National Pajamas Day. But I think it is especially appropriate for Americans to sit around in their pajamas on Friday, because with the government coming back, we're all going to be doing a lot of that, sitting around doing nothing for a long time, because they do everything for us.
I don't believe in big pajama, and I also don't believe in adults wearing pajamas. So.
I was always a huge fan of Pajama Day. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Pajama Day was the best day.
8 years old.
We have to try it.
All right. And we also have Chris Talgo, Pajama Day hater, editorial director and socialism research fellow at the Heartland Institute. How's it going?
Well, I think I made my views on pajamas very clear, so I'm sorry for being such a pajama hater.
Isn't every day in an American high school Pajama Day? I mean, I've given a few presentations at high schools, and I'm just shocked. I see girls walking around in pajamas and literal fuzzy slippers, and I'm just like, it's just a random Wednesday.
Go to an airport, it's even worse.
We could institute this in the Heartland office, I think, and that might really help us come together as a team.
Chris in a sweater is as casual as we allow it in the Heartland offices, so. Right. I'm going to let this one slide, even though it's not Friday, Chris, so it's okay.
Oh, thank you.
Has to be.
I didn't have my tuxedo pressed this morning.
Oh, you guys better watch out, or I'm gonna inflict a decline of the American fashion standards episode on us. Although maybe some of our audience might be interested in that. I don't know. I know it's something I'm interested in. So,
Me too, actually.
all right. Well, before we get started, you guys, as always, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like the video, and remember that sharing it helps break through some of YouTube's suppression, such that it is now. And even just leaving a comment helps us too. So just, you could do it right now. Right now, you could hit the like button. I can see that there's people watching live. It doesn't take but a second to hit like. Thank you, guys. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. All right, let's get right into it then. We are going to take a look at Unhinged right now, which is a country AI slop tops charts. And I'll start by saying this. Making goofy, fun AI songs is fun and goofy. But I do find the idea of people selling these things disturbing in kind of a deep way. And it has absolutely nothing to do actually with copyright or whatever, because, it's been established for a long time now that like mixing music and stuff isn't copyright. And I don't have particular sympathies. This is bad for me as a capitalist, but I don't have particular sympathies for the major music producers. So, the person who makes this stuff on this particular AI account, though, doesn't indicate on either their YouTube or their Spotify or anything that their music is AI produced, which I think is not ethical. And as much of a problem that modern country music has with being derivative, this is very literally derivative. And so we're going to play some of it for you guys. Let's go.
Been beat down, but I don't stay low. Got mud on my jeans, still ready to go. Every scar's a story that I survived. I've been through hell, but I'm still alive. They said slow down, boy, don't go too fast. But I ain't never been one to live in the past. I keep moving forward, never looking back, with a worn out hat and a 6-string strap. You can kick rocks if you don't like how I talk. I'm gonna keep on talking and walk my walk. Ain't changing my tone, ain't changing my song. I was born this way, been loud too long. You can hate my style, you can roll your eyes, but I ain't slowing down. I was born to rise, so
anyway, it is quite repetitive. It's written by an algorithm, so it's lame. And it's not the best even for AI as far as realistic human voices go. It definitely has a digital crackle on it. And I've only noticed this because I've played around extensively with these music generators, and they can get better than this. They can add breathing noises and stuff between lines. But again, I'm a country music fan. I even enjoy stadium country and like kind of some of the shallow pop country in certain contexts. But it has gotten bad on the radio. And I said before the start of the show that this song charting on any chart, whether it's just the Spotify plays or what, is much greater of an indictment of the music industry than it is, a compliment of AI, right? So I want to get you guys, get your thoughts on this here. I saw one comment from someone on the YouTube channel for that song who said that they long for the days of Rebecca Black. If you guys
there's
remember
a deep
that
cut.
Friday song from like 2011, that was just the most painful thing ever. I found that comment really tickled me. So I want to hear your thoughts here and see what the panel has to say.
Well, let me start off. I mean, first of all, I'm not a country music fan. In fact, I don't listen to a lot of modern music, to be honest. I mean, my taste, and I think this is common for most people. You kind of get your music in your 20s and you kind of keep it with you as you go along. I mean, my older brother, 10 years older than me, he wasn't into the music I was into. He was listening to his Steve Miller records and his Led Zeppelin records, and I was more into more grunge and the 1990s rock and all of that. And that's mostly what I listen to when I do listen to music. It's mostly from the 90s when I was in my 20s. So I'm not a big country music fan, although I will listen to it. I was never a country music fan, and then one time I had a business trip to Nashville, and I went to a real honky tonk with some people, and man, I even bought a CD on my way out from a band called the Chimeras. It was fantastic, and there's nothing like live music to make you a fan of that music. That said, that was the first time I heard that song by, what is the name of the fake band again? You know, that sounds bad. I know it's country pop or whatever, but it's very bluesy. That's better than a lot of country songs I've heard in my life in the last 10 years. That is for sure. It's certainly not as good as anything I heard in a live honky tonk in Nashville, but that was good. That was really good. And it's a really much difference, Linnea, and the rest of the panel. You said that the voice wasn't quite there for you. It's like, you know, but now they can put in breathing and, you know, and ums and ahs and things like that. That's better than auto-tune, which is what you get for most modern artists today anyway. And really, what's really the difference between, you know, an artist who is auto-tuned, starting with Cher in that, oh my God, I just put the song in my head, I won't be able to get it out. Believe, you know, that song, probably the biggest auto-tuned hit of all time. It was auto-tuned to the inch of its life, and it was a #1 song for Cher back in the late 80s or early 90s. I mean, what really is the difference between using a computer to auto-tune? I mean, I know there's a big difference, but as far as the finished product is concerned, to me, that sounds better than a lot of modern human artists who are auto-tuned. And either the music's good or it isn't. And obviously the music is popular because it's the #1 country song in America right now. And that's pretty amazing considering 6 months ago, we would not have had this conversation because it would have seemed utterly impossible for this to happen. And here it is.
I think that it is. Jim makes an important point, which is that cut it out, stupid phone. Jim makes an important point, which is that the music industry has kind of corrupted modern music, and in terms of in trying so hard to be efficient and to make the most amount of money possible, which is their job. I get that, but you don't make money long term by corrupting the product that you're selling. And I think that's what's happened here, is that the music industry has cheapened everything, and they have made it also vulgar in the sense of the Latin word common. They've made it also common and so ordinary and kind of lame that any kind of thing now can just come and advance along with it. The industry, as I say, has really corrupted itself, and these are actually self-correcting processes that people will turn away from this kind of music, as they have. They're actually listening to computer-made music, which is ludicrous, and so they will turn away from this, and they will start to move toward better things. And I think over time things will get better again.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No. Well, I mean, I kind of slightly disagree with Sam that this is like a fad. I think this is definitely here to stay. I personally don't like it. I am an old school traditionalist. I think the reason why I like certain music is because of the person's voice and the unique sound that they bring. I've always been a fan of Guns N' Roses. Axl Rose has a unique voice, for example. That's what makes me like that kind of music. So, I mean, I understand that young people are probably going to be all over this stuff, and they can have, infinite number of songs that they can probably create on their own in the future. But to me, it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't appeal to me.
Do you remember when we had to wait for like a CD to come out or an album to come out? I think about great songs. Jim said that he loved the, 90s, 80s rock music and stuff. And I was just thinking about like Paint It Black or Paranoid or something. And it's crazy how complex and good that music was. And so I guess my question is this fad, even if it's not a fad, if it's here to stay, going to spur the music industry into boosting, real modern creatives, or are they just going to double down on all the focus group stuff that's been killing the industry?
I don't know. It might really bifurcate the industry and have a certain segment of people who totally reject the AI created music, and then those who completely enjoy it. Once again, I think music, the reason why I do like certain songs and certain melodies and all that is because first of all, it's made by humans, and it's produced by them, and it has their feelings, it has their heart in it. I don't get that when I hear an AI song. It's generic. It doesn't have that special quality to me, and it's perfect. And one of the reasons why I like certain songs is because they're not perfect. And this is something that obviously with auto tunes and all that has changed the game. But some of the classic songs, whether it's going back to the 60s, the Beatles, all the way 70s, 80s, 90s, before all the computer effects started really changing the music scene, that's what made music special in my mind, at least.
We should also remember that every new genre or new type of music always comes up against resistance from the establishment, going all the way back to the birth of rock and roll. You could go back farther than that, but if you think about the 1950s, the rock and roll craze, the people who liked the standards of the 30s and 40s called rock and roll devil's music, and it will not last. That's why you had songs like Rock and Roll Will Never Die, because a whole generation wanted to make sure in the songs itself that it would say so. And then you go into the dawn of electronic music, bands like avant-garde, basically performance artists like Devo, and even the rise of rap music was called That's Not Real Music, and then 10 years later you have rock and rap mixing together with Walk This Way with Aerosmith and Run DMC, and then that progresses into the 90s of bands like Limp Bizkit and Korn that are completely smashing rap and rock together. I think you should think about this really not too much different from that. If you were not told that song was made by AI, that a human being did not create that song, most people would not be able to tell, period. The only reason is because it is stated as such. A lot of people that watch this show also probably watch Joe Rogan. He has been raving about this one song that he keeps playing in the green room at his comedy club, the Mothership, and he plays it for guests who've come on his show over the last few weeks. And I think it's a kind of a bluesy, earthy, guttural version of a 50 Cent song. And he plays it for people. He played it, the first time I heard it, he played it and he did not say that it was AI. He said, "This is a song I'm really listening to. Can you believe this?" And I was like, man, that is awesome. I cannot believe that guy's voice. It has so much soul and pain in it. And it was AI. And his last episode, or a couple episodes ago, was with Brett Weinstein. They were on talking for 3 hours, and they talked for probably 30 minutes about AI music. And Brett Weinstein was like, people are going to want music eventually again from human beings. And yes, if you go see a live show, you don't really want to go see a live AI. I imagine there's some way you could probably pull that off, but it's not going to be the same thing as going to see. I mean, hell, I think Paul McCartney played in Pittsburgh the other day and was another big sold out show. And the guy's, I don't know, almost 80. And so people are going to want to see human beings. Live music will still need live human beings to do them. But the idea that people are going to turn away from AI after the quote unquote fad is over, I think there's a little naivete in that, because if the music is appealing to people and it's good, they will listen to it. And Joe Rogan, he's been in the entertainment business his whole life. He's like, this is good, man. And I don't care who made it. If I like the song, I like the song. And that's what you're going to be getting from most Americans, most people around the world, I think.
This is kind of interesting because I listen to all kinds of music, and one of my favorite type of music is the Baroque era, the early 1700s and late 1600s. And often, sometimes I'll be on Spotify and it'll recommend a song, and it's by a composer, Blamiani. It's like, who the heck is Blamiani? I've never heard of him. I'll bet that's AI. And then I go to Wikipedia or something even better like Britannica, and I'll look up Blamiani, and there he is. He's a 17th century composer that we only now rediscovered. So I think that's really fascinating. But then again, I also like the 20s and 30s jazz, and I love Django Reinhardt. Who doesn't love Django Reinhardt? Come on. So and I'm listening to Django Reinhardt, and I look and there's a recommendation from Spotify again to we're doing a lot of advertising for Spotify today. I can't help it. We got to do more advertising for pajamas, is in my view. But I'm looking at the ad there on Spotify, and it says you should, if you like Django Reinhardt, you'll like this. And it was like the coffee club or something. And I look at it, that I can't find. So I went online and I'm looking, what's the coffee club? And it's like, we have no idea. Even, Google and all those other search engines, which I'm now selling as well, apparently, are all saying, we've never heard of coffee club. You're talking about like going and joining a club where you drink coffee? I said, no, it's a band. And they're like, no, there's no such thing. So I turn it on and listen to the coffee club, as one does. And it's like, geez, that sounds just like Django Reinhardt. It is so amazing what they can do. And I think that, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, I would listen to this. If I didn't know it was fake, I'd listen to it. And then it's like, well, why am I not listening to it? So I'm kind of in the Joe Rogan category there. It's like, I guess we should listen to this stuff if it's good, even if it's invented by a computer.
Yeah, I think the difference comes in with like Joe Rogan being obsessed with an AI cover of a song that a real person wrote is not the same category as something that, an AI program wrote the lyrics, put the song together, and then the person just like click generate, 3 dozen times until they found one that sounded good. It's not the same thing as like, we have people at the Heartland Institute, one person in particular who may or may not be on this program right now, who's worked on digital music before. And even that, like electronic and digital music takes a huge amount of effort and, people making specific choices and stuff as to what elements they're mixing in and everything. And I just think that there is something to be said for the human element in art. Even if it's from like a purely mathematical point of view, not different. I think there is actually a difference. But that's just my opinion, and I probably shouldn't have one because I was listening to NSYNC earlier. So that's I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we wrap this up, and like one way to think about it is that this is, we're a free market think tank. This is another level of competition, right?
Yeah,
it's entered the marketplace. That's obviously what has happened here, and humans can respond to that. They can respond to that by with their own creativity. So I want to, before we wrap this up, Donnie Kendall, who is the host of Justin and Donald's Save America on our Stopping Socialism TV channel, which you can find just by searching for Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube. He made a new theme song for their videos that we can play right now, and this is also completely text prompt AI.
Justin and Donald take the ride. Truth and grit, they won't let slide. Justin and Donald saving the day. America's voice paving the way. Red, white, blue, it's here to stay.
All right, we can fade that out. I mean,
yeah.
It's a little too self-referential for my taste, but nice job, Donnie.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said at the beginning, there's a difference between, making fun, goofy stuff for fun, goofy purposes, and then people who are trying to pass off AI music as legitimate music. I think that actually is unethical. But whether the market likes it or not, I think it's unethical. Alrighty. Well, I guess we can move on here, but this is a fun topic, and I'm sure that we'll have a whole AI episode again soon. Hopefully that I can be involved in it, and it's not just Donnie taking over for me. But my second topic here is exodus, movement of people. Not satisfied with the life they're living. They are leaving Babylon. I mean, New York City for Connecticut, I suppose. So from the Western Journal, realtors say they're already seeing the Mamdani effect in action. It's not good. In the least surprising news, since soap was discovered in someone's shower, both real estate agents and media outlets are reporting that upper-class New Yorkers are looking to decamp the city, even to Connecticut, not precisely a place known for low cost of living or taxes. But it is known for one thing, being Mamdani free, and something that makes it livable without having to pay through the nose for the privilege of getting mugged by someone who probably won't even be arrested by the social worker dispatched to deal with the situation, if Zoran gets his way. The New York Post reported that realtors in leafy Greenwich said their open houses have been packed and selling prices are going through the roof after Zoran Mamdani's mayoral win in New York City sparked fears over everything from unsafe city buses to an economic meltdown. That's pretty quick, but I suppose that you want to get out of Dodge before they slap on an exit tax. So if we want to comment here, otherwise I'm going to bring up the Committee to Unleash Prosperity article. What do you guys think?
Just real quick, I want to make it abundantly clear to the audience that the people who are leaving are the multimillionaires and the uber rich who can afford to do that. The people who are going to be stuck in the hellhole that New York City is going to become under Mamdani are going to be the people who are poor, who have no ability. They don't have the means, they don't have the wherewithal to go live in Connecticut, or Delaware or anywhere else, in that region. So yeah, the millionaires are bailing, but the middle class, working class people, they're going to get stuck.
One important thing I learned in reading on this is that Mamdani wants to change the police to a purely investigative organization where they let the crimes happen and they don't try to prevent them in any way by having any public presence. Then they just come and write it up and say, okay, this person was, stabbed in the heart 10 times. That's an assault, or a parking violation of some sort.
But it's even worse because he doesn't want to have the police force go in there and interdict the guy who's stabbing the woman in the heart. They want to have social workers go and try to explain to him, you might want to put down the knife because that's a really mean, bad thing to be doing to that lady. And I'm sure that guy's going to just, drop the knife and say, oh, thank you for telling me that.
This is really kind of mind blowing. I mean, this is a social experiment with 7-8 million people. I don't see that working out very well. Anyway, I think that's why people are leaving.
Yep. Alrighty. So from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, we have a new report just today, actually, I think maybe yesterday. New York and New Jersey have lost $670 billion in income from movers over the last couple of years. There are some great charts in this article, so I wanted to make sure that we brought them up. And I want to highlight in particular, so this one that is on the screen right now is just kind of a general trends chart. We also have one that's a little bit further down the page that's about New York's lost income. Right there, yep. 2 million New Yorkers who fled over the last decade took their incomes to other states, and the cumulative losses are growing. And I imagine they are going to continue to grow. And the same is true of New Jersey, whose chart is a little bit down from there. Although it's not as extreme a curve, I think because a lot of New Yorkers move to New Jersey first before they totally give up on it. And so, Sam, I just got to know, is this sustainable? I mean, I said last week that my greatest fear is that these states, especially New York, will learn nothing and will just get bailed out by the government.
Well, obviously, it's not sustainable in the sense that you cannot operate like this. But it will be sustained as long as they continue on the path that they're on. This is what leads to a debt spiral, where you keep spending more and more, and you keep raising tax rates, but you reduce the amount of taxes that you're bringing in because the people who are productive measured by the fact that they get a lot of money, they're productive in one way or another. The people who are productive leave, and they're replaced, especially in the case of New York City, they're replaced by immigrants. And so you're going from people who were making a lot of revenue, personal revenue, and paying high taxes on it to the city of New York. They leave and they're replaced by people who are net tax takers instead of tax payers. So what as that continues on, you lose services. You do mad things like taking the police out of intervention and into purely investigation, and which is going to be just purely ignoring crime altogether and faking the numbers to say, well, there weren't any crimes in New York this year at all because none were reported. Well, okay, I guess you can believe that. So, but that leads to a downward spiral, and that's the problem that you have, is that you get farther and farther into debt. You get farther and farther into a loss of services, and that process keeps pushing more and more people out. In the materials that we read for this program, it was noted that it's not just the uber wealthy leaving this time. That the people going to Connecticut, for example, there are many, many of them that are more sort of ordinary New Yorkers who are trying to get out of the state before the whole place blows up. And that is a natural process. So it's not fiscally sustainable, but it's socially sustainable and, in fact, accelerates.
Jim, you're muted.
If Jim
Got
doesn't
him.
pull a Jim, if Jim doesn't pull a Jim, is it really a podcast? To me, I mean, to me, it's even not so much even the taxes, although that obviously has an effect, and that obviously does matter. But New York has been a high tax jurisdiction for decades, and the state, and New York City even more so. Bill de Blasio, we used to joke and call him Bill de Cameo because he basically was a communist. But crime in the sense of chaos was still relatively tamped down even under de Blasio. But it's the crime, it's the chaos that has been building. And when there are certain high profile things that happen in a city, especially New York City, that crank up the sense of chaos more than the taxes. That happens every few decades, it seems, or maybe every decade in New York City. And the Daniel Penny incident, where he is stepping in to try to subdue a complete maniac who threatened to kill everybody on his subway train, and the person he subdued ended up dying. And then Daniel Penny was the one who was pursued to the very extent of the law and had his freedom threatened. And those kinds of things. And again, the Bernie Getz incident in the 70s, when I lived in New York City as just a child, it was all anybody in New York City talked about. And surely the Daniel Penny incident, him trying to be a hero, was all anybody in New York City was talking about for that year. If there was one story. And so, it's that kind of sense of societal decay and chaos that the rich people are wanting to leave. I mean, yes, there is an economic factor. They're worried about get out before there's an exit tax, which I don't know, how is that constitutional that we're going to tax you for leaving? That seems very, not just un-American, but absolutely unconstitutional. Certainly immoral. But that's what the rich people are feeling. Because as Chris pointed out, if you're among the uber wealthy in New York City, you're the kind of people who live in the Upper West Side or Upper East Side. You're an investment banker. You're Mandy Patinkin, who's a famous actor and millionaire, doesn't have to worry about anything. Your $10 million condo looks over Central Park. Those people, they can afford basically whatever cost of living increases that happen in New York City. It is the middle class, as much as it exists and live inside the city limits, and the poor that get hammered the most. And so when these people who have means, you don't move to Connecticut if you're a fireman. You move to Connecticut if you're a media mogul, or if you're like somebody like Megyn Kelly, or you work for Fox News. Most of those people probably live in Connecticut already. Those are the people that are leaving. It's going to be very interesting to see. I think I'm actually a little bit surprised that the exodus is already happening. I thought a lot of these people, especially those, those really movement liberals, would at least give it a year to see if they could experience the joys of socialism. But a good number of them are already bugging out. And of course, what that's going to do is the danger of that is that obviously it reduces the tax base. There's less money that can be collected in taxes to provide all of these free services that are already on top of all the other free services and all the other public services that are in a city like New York. It is going to spiral down. And as a lot of people in the comments have noted, good luck, because as Gerald Ford said to New York City in 1970s, drop dead. Donald Trump's going to say, drop deader. You're not getting a bailout from the taxpayers in the same places in this country.
Yeah, I didn't have time before the show to grab this post and add it to the show notes that I had just seen. That new, I guess, Seattle mayor candidate, who I think they're still running office.
No.
She just won.
Last night she won, Katie Wilson.
Okay. All right. So she was talking about how if the policies run grocery stores into the ground, she's going to make it illegal for them to close. What does that mean? I don't even know what that would entail, but she's along the same lines as Mamdani. Maybe a little bit more shrill, but it's looking pretty bad out there. And so I wanted to move on to our next topic here, which is related to stuff that we talked about last week. But last week we didn't have new polling from Rasmussen and Heartland. A new national telephone and online survey by Rasmussen Reports and the Glenn C. Haskins Emerging Issues Center of the Heartland Institute finds that 52% of likely U.S. voters between the ages of 18 and 39 view Mamdani favorably, including 26% with a very favorable opinion, and 24% of under 40 voters view him unfavorably, including 12% only with a very unfavorable impression, and another 24% are not sure. The survey, completed before Mamdani won in the November 4th election in New York City, shows that an overwhelming majority of voters under 40, that's 74% of voters under 40, believe the cost of housing in America has reached a crisis level. Most of them favor specific policies advocated by Mamdani, including rent freezes and government-run grocery stores. A majority, 51% of under 40 voters would like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win in 2028, and 32% would not, and 17% are not sure. 86% of Democrats aged 18 to 39 would like to see a Democratic Socialist win, and 65% of Republicans would not. But notice, that's only 65%. The rest are either unsure or supportive of a Democratic Socialist. Among under 40 voters not affiliated with either party, 37% like the Democratic Socialist, 31% do not, and 32% are undecided. So pretty much an even split there, more or less. All right. So in terms of, kind of drilling down into the more specific proposals, one of the proposals that got support was Mamdani's policy platform that includes rent freezing in many of New York City's apartments and building 200,000 new rent-regulated apartments because rent control has worked so well for New York so far. 62% would support a proposal in Congress to expand that plan for government housing and rent freezes nationwide. And 32% would strongly support that plan. So I'm going to let that sink in, as Elon Musk says. 62% of voters between the ages of 18 and 39 would support a proposal for nationwide rent freeze. And 32% strongly support it. That's pretty significant, guys. 58% would support a law that would expand his proposal for government-run grocery stores to every town in America. And overwhelming majorities of every political and demographic category believe the cost of housing in America has reached a crisis level. 82% of Democrats, 66% of Republicans, 71% of unaffiliated think the cost of housing is a crisis, and 75% of white people think so, 73% of Black and Hispanic, and 68% of other minorities. So this is being the majority of people who think there's a housing crisis are, when you break it down by race, are white people, the largest share of the majority. But still, it's a majority in each category. Pluralities of under 40 voters, regardless of party, would be more likely to vote for a presidential candidate who offered the best plan to reduce the cost of housing. And this is something we talked about on this very show last week, is that the people who are interested in this issue, which is almost everybody, it seems, would be more likely to vote for a candidate that offered probably any plan, honestly. The best plan, sure, but any plan would do. And it just seems like a lot of the times, it's just Republicans have not been able to get their act together, obviously, to promote a solid plan on this issue. And so I don't know who wants to go first on this. I'll leave it open to the panel. But these numbers are surprising, even as far as, I knew that most younger people, even though the trends seem to be more towards conservatism for Gen Z, I knew that still the majority leaned left, but I didn't realize that it was, 58% of people in my age group think that government-run grocery stores are a good idea. Like, that's crazy.
I think there's a lot going on here, and there's a ton to unpack. And I'll try my best to do it here in a couple minutes. At least I'll try to hit the highlights here. So
Sure.
first of all, I agree that the young people in America rightfully feel that they are in a affordability crisis and that the American dream is in peril. I understand that. I don't think that it is being overblown by them. I think that it is a real problem that they've been facing for a long time, and they want solutions. Unfortunately, I think that there's a tendency for young people to blame the people in power. So I understand how they're saying, well, Trump's in the White House. He's been there for almost a year, and the housing prices are still high and groceries are still high. So it's all his fault, when people know that obviously it takes many years to get to the root cause of these problems. It's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to be a very long-term fix. I do think that there is a little bit of a silver lining here, because it doesn't seem to me that these people are totally wedded to the Democratic Socialist platform. I think that what they're saying here, if you read between the lines, is they want someone from either party to come out and come up with viable solutions to the problems that they are currently facing. And right now, I think that the Republicans, and I've been watching President Trump on some interviews recently, and he's just saying, no, you're wrong. There is no affordability crisis. Everything's great. The cost of groceries are real low, and beef is a little bit high, but everything else is great. And 50-year mortgage will solve the housing affordability crisis. And that's just totally untrue. These are really deeply rooted problems. They're going to require some big fixes. There is not a short-term solution to this. And it looks like we are going to have to educate the young generation as to why these problems are really happening. They're not happening because of a free market. They're happening because government regulation has totally distorted the housing market in particular, and also, our food market and consolidation and all these, monopoly providers of beef and stuff. It is a really crony system in place, and it's going to require a lot of hard work and some viable solutions here in the near term and in the long term to get young people, on the right path here.
Yeah, I want to address real quick. One of our viewers asks a question, or says, thanks, Court. I'm failing to find the link to understand. We have a low birth rate, yet we have a housing shortage. What has happened to those houses that older generations have sold and moved on? Well, one, there's a bunch of different factors that go into this. One, the big one, immigration, for sure. That's in particular when it comes to low income housing, or, more affordable housing. So that's definitely one of them. Another one that I have heard, although I'm skeptical about the scale of this, which is large companies buying up single family homes in order to rent them out. That's part of it. Another part is, someone on Rumble just made the same comment. Another part of it also is that there are a lot of people who don't sell their house. They buy a new house, but they have the money to use their old house as like a rental property and stuff too, which there's nothing wrong with choosing to do that. But it's becoming more and more common for people to own, a bunch of properties. And again, that's not a problem, but it is reducing the amount of housing. But I think
from the 30,000, but the 30,000 foot level is lack of supply. And one of the major reasons for lack of supply is you've got these crazy zoning laws, you've got these insane building requirements, permitting requirements, and all this stuff. And I mean, this has been going on for a very long time. And Thomas Sowell in Basic Economics wrote about this decades ago, where he said it's in the interest of the homeowners who live in a community to not want more new homes to be built, because that's then going to have an effect on the cost of their house, on the price of their house. So therefore, we've got into this strange dynamic where we allow local and state governments to basically outlaw new houses being built. This is not a federal problem. This is much more of a local and even a state problem. I grew up in a pretty wealthy suburb north of Chicago, and this was happening, when I was a kid, about we don't want new housing development. We don't want more homes being built. We want to keep it the way it is. It's the old NIMBYism, not in my backyardism. And it's, it helps those who already have a home, but it excludes people, especially younger people, from getting a starter home. There's, like you said, there's so many other things at play here, where starter homes are not being built, but mega mansions are being built because there's the market for that. So there's so many other things happening here. But yeah, this is a really complicated problem, and it's not going to be fixed by a nationwide rent freeze or more government housing. It's actually going to make it 10 times worse, not better.
I think that in large part, this is a temporary issue. The reason being that we've had a lot of inflation since 2022, and it hasn't gotten squeezed out of the economy just yet. And so what happens is you have very high prices in places like New York City, for example, that have had a huge amount of immigration. So and they don't have a lot of new building going on there for the reasons cited. So you put all those things together, and it becomes an issue for a lot of people. But it's not necessarily a permanent long-term trend. I think the permanent long-term trend that we have to worry about is the amount of inflation that we've had. The U.S. dollar has been decreasing in value very rapidly since Nixon basically finally took us fully off the gold standard in 1971. And if you look at housing prices, they start rising in 71, and they have been vertiginous in their increase. And I think a big reason for that is that for normal people, a house is a big investment, and it is a place where you can put your money, where it won't be the value won't deteriorate. If the value of the U.S. dollar is deteriorating, but the values of houses are rising, then that's going to create a whole lot of demand for housing. And that's going to keep people in their houses and not saying, well, let's downsize and rent. So a lot of this has to do with the very complex interactions of things, but it's all being caused by government. The immigration, the zoning, the increases in prices of a variety of things that are caused by, for example, the government restrictions on mining, and on oil and gas development, and on the lumber. So you put all those things together, it's all government that's doing this. But how do you go to the people then, especially young people, and say, well, it's government that did all this, and we're going to take that all away, and then things will be just fine? It's like telling them, if young people will start building houses, then things will be better. Well, that's true. But is anybody going to want to hear that? I have my doubts. So I think we know what the right policies would be. Selling them, I don't know. That's a more difficult issue.
Yep, Jim, I think you had something to contribute here.
Yeah, I mean, let's back this up and get not just talk about housing, but the results of this poll so far. You can go to heartland.org. It's the second featured item right there on the front page, and you can read the questions for yourself, read the answers, and you can click on a link to see all the crosstabs, so you can really dig into the poll yourself. But what's interesting, one of the many interesting things about this poll is that a lot of these younger voters went for Trump just a year ago. But younger voters are stressed, and yes, they are impatient for change. You may not like it, but it is the truth, and you're not going to be able to change that. And again, it's weird because a year ago you voted for MAGA, and now you're like, well, that stuff Mamdani, a freaking communist, is saying is appealing to me. This shows that these voters are not ideological in the way that older generations like myself, Gen X, may have been. They're looking for answers that make sense to them, or that have a promise at least to improve their lives. They not even, maybe they don't even care much about the American values of freedom and capitalism over communism. Again, bedrock American principles that most other generations have had bred into them. It's in their blood, right? Especially when we were in the Cold War, there was always about two different systems, capitalism and communism. Capitalism won, and now 2 generations on, the younger people that are in that capitalist system are looking around for where's their American dream, and they just don't feel it, and they certainly just don't see it. And so this is very dangerous, I think, for not just President Trump, but for Republicans in general and the MAGA movement in general. Trump got that support from young voters because they were suffering in the doldrums of the same old, especially in the Biden economy. And Trump had to promise that we're going to make America, you join me, and we're going to make America great again. That was very appealing to a generation that felt it was never going to experience the American dream. And so they went with Trump. But Trump also promised radical change in that messaging, and that really hasn't happened. I mean, yes, he's done it with his immigration policy. I think in October, there was something like 0 or very close to 0 illegal crossings on the southern border, which we were told was absolutely impossible. So yay, congratulations on that. And, rethinking, certainly stopping illegal immigration, and rethinking maybe our legal immigration processes is an important part to solving this problem and creating more economic and housing opportunities for younger people, because that does matter. When you increase the supply of people and you don't increase the supply of housing, you are going to have pressures that make the housing more expensive. But then just this week, this was so frustrating for people who support Donald Trump and the MAGA agenda, when he had an interview with Laura Ingraham this week, and she asked him about the H-1B visa program, which basically is how Silicon Valley, which is the engine of our economy these days, is importing very, very cheap labor to do technical jobs and tech jobs that Americans can do, but it's a lot cheaper to bring somebody from overseas, mostly from 2 countries, China and India, and lock Americans out of those really high-paying, good quality jobs. And Trump's response to that was, no, this is actually a good thing. We need more of these people because we don't have Americans in this country who can do those jobs. That is just simply not true. When I heard that, I support the MAGA agenda. I support Donald Trump. I think it's good that he's president and not Kamala Harris. But that is so tone deaf. And so these numbers are going to get worse if the MAGA movement does not have better messaging on this and, frankly, get their head straight on this sort of thing. Because I get the feeling that Donald Trump talks to a lot of executives in corporate America, and they told him, we love the H-1B program. We need that. That's what makes this economy go. And so Donald Trump just believes them, or that's the position he will now take, when the irony is that when he first ran for president in 2016, he was against the H-1B visa program and he wanted to rein it in. And now he's completely flipped around. And so young voters who are, just coming into their own as adults and, want to fully participate in the American dream and the American society and are seeing barriers everywhere, they hear that. And then they're like, no, that's not right. And they look over to their left and there's Mamdani promising all of these things. And again, these are not people that have a locked in ideology. These are people looking for answers to make their lives better after basically becoming an adult through their teenage years. And now, because this poll is from voters age 39 and below, have lived their entire adult life and never felt like they could get ahead. So yeah, these kind of voters are fickle, but they're looking for answers. And if they don't see them from the MAGA movement, they really have no other choice but to embrace the promises, the empty promises of socialism. But that's where this is coming from. And so we are back into another ideological battle here in the United States, although it's not one ideology over in the Soviet Union and one here in the free West. Now all of that is right here on our shores together. It's we got to be ready for it.
So like the school problem that was put into people's view after the pandemic, I think that the housing problem is finally coming into people's view. And what I hope happens is that people at the local level go and run for their town council and all those positions. Way back a long time ago, I was on the accommodations tax committee at the town of Bluffton, and I got to vote on certain taxes that we were going to pass or not pass. And they all hated me because I just basically voted against all of them. But that just goes to show that, the people need to take their towns back, just like they took their school councils, or their, school boards back. If the people, I live in Buffalo Grove, I get the weekly Buffalo Grove government, newsletter, and they talk about how they're going to have a meeting to determine whether or not such and such development can happen, or whether such and such, restaurant can be built. And I just find it strange that 7 or 8 people are determining for all 30,000 people who live in Buffalo Grove whether or not this can or cannot happen. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon people who care about this and who have a stake, have skin in the game, to get on those boards and to say, no, actually, we do need more housing, or no, you know what, that empty lot, we should sell that to a developer to build, some starter homes and that kind of a thing. That will have a huge impact on this. It's not necessarily at the federal level that this is going to be solved. It's mostly at the local and state level.
Yeah. I mean, look, like we said last week, what you've got multiple generations of young people who were told you need to go and you need to get a college degree. It's okay if you go into debt with it because you're just going to pay it off over time with whatever great tech job you get. So go into STEM and you're going to have a job and it'll be terrific. Well, it turns out that didn't happen. Like I said last week, people are, having a hard time finding a job if they have a degree in 16th century French poetry, and they're also having a hard time finding a degree if they finding a job if they got a degree in petroleum engineering or computer engineering. It's hard all across the board. This isn't something that's in young people's heads. Like, they're not just imagining that they're having a difficult time when actually it's all, all the opportunity that they could ever want is right in front of them. It's not true that it's easy for kids. It's really not.
And even more importantly, so Linnea, I graduated college a couple of years basically before the 2008 crisis. And I remember during the Obama campaign and even in his second campaign, Paul Ryan, saying, hey, if you're still living in your parents' basement and you've got a, post of Obama, maybe you should try something else. So this has been a long simmering problem that is really coming to the forefront. And, this is a dangerous, recipe here, because you do not want 52% or, 60% of the young people saying, you know what, only one side's giving me something that sounds like it could work, and I'm just going to let them, go at it, because we want to have both parties presenting competing solutions to this. So we got to make sure that the Republican Party does not, just ignore this and put their head in the sand and say, you know what, everything's great. Just give us a couple more years and energy prices are going to come down and everything's just going to solve itself. No, it's not going to. It's definitely not going to.
The Republicans certainly should not ignore this. No one should ignore it. I do think that Chris's mention of the Great Recession is pertinent, because it was a temporary problem. But it affected those who were entering the labor force at that time permanently for the long term. So when these things happen, again, government caused that. We all know that government caused the Great Recession, and government caused the great inflation of the past couple of years. And so the solution, we know what the solution is we have to cut this government intrusion into our lives. But the thing is that this will pass. The inflation is getting squeezed out. The numbers don't always clearly say it, but it has happened. And the Federal Reserve has, in fact, been suppressing economic growth now for a year and a half, and especially during this year. Starting last November, they've been suppressing economic growth very, very effectively from their perspective. And they were worried about too much employment. They were worried that there were too many jobs out there, which is grotesque and disgusting and foolish, but that's how the Federal Reserve works. So we really are going to need a little bit of patience here as policy analysts to recognize that this is all going to, that the next crisis is on the way. This crisis is going to be relieved in most places, places like New York and Seattle and Los Angeles. It's going to be further exaggerated because of their own darn foolishness. But we really need to, the big picture is that we really, really need to shrink the interference of the federal government in everything that we do. And that's the only thing that is going to fix the affordability crisis, which is to let people create, build, do service, serve one another, and buy and sell those goods and services without manipulation by the government, including currency manipulation. Until we get there, we're always going to be falling short of what we can accomplish.
Well, but we're in uncharted territory because we've never had an entire generation embrace socialism like we're seeing now. So when Mamdani had his victory speech and he was quoting Eugene Debs, I went back and checked because Eugene Debs ran for the president 4 or 5 times in the early 1900s. Every single time he got less than 10% of the vote. Every single time. Now our poll is telling us that if the presidential election in 2028 were held today, that they would support him 51%. That is insane.
Well, to be accurate, Mamdani did not quote Eugene Debs while he was running. He was saying that I'm going to make the buses free and things like that, which short-term thinking.
But what I'm saying is that he used that as like a historical context. And when you look at the historical context, 100 years ago, Eugene Debs was some fringe freak that the American people overwhelmingly rejected. And now Mamdani, who is basically espousing the same policies, is looking like he's the savior of the country. And the young generation are just, enamored with him. That to me is scary.
I think that the more people get to know him, the less they're going to like about him. AOC was a very big deal, and everybody was so terrified that she's going to be president in a couple of years, and people still say things like that. But the more people get to know AOC, the less they think of her. And her supporters are people like Bernie Sanders and what's her name, Pocahontas, who Liz Warren, who are 10,000 years old and about to leave the scene, if not the earth. These things go. They progress a while and then they change. Things go up and down. What we need to do is concentrate on the fundamentals in this country. Fundamentals. People buying and selling, building.
But we also need to focus on education because education is a foundation, of all of this. So in the 1950s, I highly doubt that most public schools were saying, actually communism's great. And, if we just try it here and just make a couple changes here and there, it'll really work. No, that just did not exist. Even in the
50s, but in the 70s and 80s,
even in the 1990s, when I was in grade school, I don't ever remember a teacher coming in and kind of like saying, communism and socialism's good. I remember that kind of happening when I got to college in the early 2000s. Then I remember when I went back to my high school in, the late 2010s ish. I was just completely shocked and awed, like, oh my God, you guys are literally saying that communism's a good thing. Then even when I went down south and taught in Bluffton, South Carolina for 5 years, I thought, okay, it's a red state, South Carolina. They probably won't even have nearly as much of that. It was just as worse. So I'm telling you, I've been in the classrooms not that long ago, and I saw it with my own two eyes. When I was getting my teacher certification and going through the process of becoming a social studies, high school teacher, they were literally trying to indoctrinate me. That is happening across the country, and I think it would be very short-sighted for us to just be like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. Eventually they'll get jobs and they'll start, realizing that, free market capitalism is better than socialism. That is not written in stone. There's no law that says that. The reason why people like my dad and you and Jim and myself and Linnea, I think the reason why we reject it is because not only did society at that time, but especially the education system did. That is all flipped. Now society is glorifying socialism. It's a cool thing. Kids watch it on TikTok and it just sounds great. And that's something that we're really going to have to fight with. And I know this is, something that's not really, germane to this conversation, but that's something that the states are really going to have to fight with, especially states, where like in New York that have really, really poor education systems. And then we're going to get into the math and reading and stuff later on. But coming from a social studies teacher, when you're teaching them that every time collectivism has been tried, it's been great, but it's just had a couple flaws here and there. And actually, free market capitalism is terrible, and it's led to to all this terrible stuff. That is resonating with young people, and I'm afraid that they're going to carry those beliefs for the rest of their life.
That trend really did start in the 1960s and 70s, but it accelerated massively in the 2000s. There's no question about that. And I think that that's why you're getting these numbers. And the point is that we can change those numbers by changing what we do. And one of the projects that's out there is there's a really great civics project out there, the Civics Alliance, a fantastic organization, and we just need to support movements like that and change things. We can't change the way the 20 people who are now 20 to 25 to 30 years old. We can't change the way they were educated. It's too late. What we can do, though, is change what the next generation is going to. How they're going to approach the world, how they're going to see things. We can change that, and we can do right by fixing the fundamentals of this country in terms of how our economy works, how our laws work, how we view our rights. We can change all those things, and I think that even Zoomers who are worried about the price of beef in New York City will recognize that. Well, it's going better. That now that people are building things and now that people are free to offer services to one another at whatever price they want, and it doesn't have minimum wage attached to it and the like, that all those distortions. If we remove those distortions, things will get better, and the young people who are in the workforce, just entering the workforce now, will find things that are much better for them, and they'll stop worrying about this.
Well, most of the topic here was kind of spiraling off from our polling subject, but I wanted to point out that Gallup polling also shows that people are more and more worried about inflation, among other economic issues. And one of the ways that you can hedge against inflation is by investing in precious metals. A lot of people in conservative and libertarian and plain old prepper spaces, which I enjoy, will hit you with advertisements for buying precious metals. They're not wrong that they are a good investment, but you want to be really careful about who you buy your metals from. You might have a nice guy at a local, precious metals shop, but he also might be a charlatan, and you never know. But at In the Tank, we trust Advisor Metals over all of those other guys. And that is because we know that the person running the place is the best of the best. A great friend of Liberty, Ira Bershatsky, owns and is the managing member of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. What does that mean for you? Well, it means everything that Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be factual. So there's no sketchy sales pitch or any bait and switch. IRA is held to the highest ethical standards, and there is full transparency, which is far too lacking in other places nowadays. If you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you're planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty, if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. He's going to make it easy for you, you guys. Please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. Go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. And when you talk to Ira, make sure that you tell him who sent you. That was us. We sent you. That helps us as you are helping yourself in your own financial future by diversifying with precious metals from Advisor Metals. All right. So Chris and Sam were very enthusiastic about the fixing education subject, which was supposed to be our final topic. And I hope that you guys have more to talk about on this subject and you didn't just use it all up in the last section. But so while young people are finding socialism more and more appealing, it seems that math scores are actually worse than we thought. Hot Air has an article where they said that UC San Diego says that incoming students cannot do basic math. Almost 15% of incoming students cannot perform math at the first grade level, and fewer than 1 out of 5 can perform math at the 8th grade level. These are college students at a fairly prestigious university, many of whom have achieved very good grades in math prior to graduation. They have been awarded good to great grades without being able to do math. So there's a couple of tweets in this article that are embedded here. If we can just scroll down to them a little bit here. First one from Patrick Collison, who says, who's reporting from the UCSD report, at our campus, the picture is truly troubling. Between 2020 and 2025, the number of freshmen whose math placement exam results indicate they do not meet middle school standards grew 30-fold, despite all of these students despite almost all of these students passing their classes. So there's if you scroll down a little bit more, there is a problem that UCSD math department administered to 138 students right there. Yep. In a remedial math class, and 25% of them got this question wrong. That question was 7 + 2 = blank + 6.
Wow. Wow.
We are not talking about students having trouble dealing with calculus or algebra 2. Many students cannot do basic addition and subtraction, and only 54% of incoming students can do 5th grade math. It's gotten to the point where professors in STEM fields are totally overwhelmed and unable to provide college-level courses to students in college. The situation was bad before COVID, and it has rapidly deteriorated since. Students have not only failed to catch up to the poor level of achievement that they displayed prior to the pandemic, but they continue to decline. So why is this happening? One reason is pandemic learning loss, which is a pretty significant gap and dip that you can see in a lot of the charts that they provide. And another reason is the elimination of standardized test requirements, coupled with high school grade inflation. So you can see there's a chart that shows growth in administrative staff, principals. This is something I wanted to point out because it's pretty remarkable. So we're pouring all this money into schools, and there's a chart that shows where the money is going. And it is 95% going to administrative staff, 39% going to principals and assistants, 10% going to teachers, and 5% going to students. And yet, America has the highest rates of spending per student in the developed world. So if that tells you what we're spending our money on, yeah, it's pretty bad. But there's kind of a weird twist to this that I came across shortly before the show. So unfortunately, Andy, I'm going to make things hard for you because I did not have it. I might be able to just put the link in the chat here for you, Andy. But there was a study that came out a couple of years ago, though, that compared. So this is just like globally going to make things sound even worse. Ready? Globally, seniors in the United States, seniors meaning senior students, in the United States substantially outperform seniors in China, India, and Russia, and score comparably with seniors in elite institutions in those countries. That's kind of scary, considering we're being told that not only are our students not working very well or not performing very well, but apparently other countries that we are frequently outsourcing our jobs to actually perform worse in computer science in particular. I only wanted to add that to say this isn't actually just the United States problem even, which is interesting. This is an everywhere problem, or even with the United States' issues, we're still outperforming the countries that all of our H-1Bs are going to. So that's crazy. Anyway, like last week, I wanted to ask the panel what like solid, actionable, achievable solutions that we can pursue here. Like we said, students are interested in socialism because the socialists are able to give, even though it's a false promise, they're able to say, we are going to do this, and you don't have to be a genius to see how their proposed solution on the surface level sounds like it would immediately fix their problem, right? So I don't want to hear, well, we just need to ban libs from having teaching jobs, because not only is that not going to happen, it's not something anybody is going to actually propose. So that, and then also I want to touch on what can our viewers do specifically, because it's one thing to gripe about young people. It's another to identify how they can help, right? So anybody who has something to toss out there. The math scores thing, I think, is a multifaceted problem. Part of it having to do with just a drop in standards in general. That is kind of I think it's like a philosophy that a lot of these administrators have, which is that you don't want to make any students feel bad by holding them back. So they just like push everyone through. And also, I suspect, and Chris, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, some of this has to do with the very funding that I pointed out. Because if you're getting funded based on graduation levels and test scores, then you're going to make sure that that stuff looks good, whether or not they're actually learning anything.
The graduation rate is directly tied to federal funding for public schools. So I was told that even if a student failed my class, and I was teaching mostly U.S. history and world history and some other classes, basically I was not allowed to fail them. I had to give them every single chance. It was like they were pointing the finger like you're the problem if the student just did no homework, barely ever showed up, failed the quizzes, failed the tests. It was, you're the problem, because they want to make sure that everyone, gets a passing grade so that their funding is fulfilled to the max. And, they're doing a total injustice to these students. In the high school that I was at in Bluffton, South Carolina, there was a big problem with math. And I remember going to some of the math teachers, and they were just like, they can't do it. I remember there was all sorts of special tutor sessions. The students were asked to stay after school and come in on Friday nights, and they would do big math tutors and all this stuff. It didn't work. They also couldn't read. I remember talking to a lot of the English teachers saying, and even when I was doing class readings, this was pretty basic stuff. And this was from sophomore year all the way to senior year. I had to be very hesitant as to, do any sort of class readings because they could not read. And I didn't want to make them feel bad. But, we're doing them such an injustice by promoting them and passing them when they are not getting the skills that are needed for them to actually pass those classes. And it's, I agree with you, Jim, that the H-1B visa thing is sort of a problem, but I understand why some of these companies are saying maybe the talent is not being, produced here in the United States. And maybe for very certain fields, specialty fields, we do need to go abroad to places, I don't know, like South Korea, Japan, China, and places like that, Germany, where those kids are thriving in those spaces.
The system. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Sam. No, go ahead. I'll wait.
The system is corrupt. There's no question about that. And Chris, what you brought up was really interesting. First of all, I did not imagine that the numbers were quite this bad. And I am no fan of our government-run education system, but this is really shockingly, horribly bad. And it is an outcome, though, as Chris alluded to, it's an outcome of Republicans. On the national level, Republicans did this. They passed No Child Left Behind during the George W. Bush administration, and he signed it. And the whole premise behind No Child Left Behind was that school funding, especially by using the lever of the federal government, school funding would be based on how many students you graduate. And there were all these standards that were allegedly going to be put in place to make sure that it was all on the up and up. But they didn't enforce any of that because what happens is there are elections. And you get an election and you get Barack Obama as president. And he is not going to enforce those rules on how how you measure what the schools are doing. And in fact, they're going to undermine those, which is exactly what they did. So No Child Left Behind was a terrible idea in the first place. And what it did was in the execution of it, yes, Barack Obama truly executed it. And so the No Child Left Behind made this system where the schools and the school districts and even the states would simply fake the numbers and lie about everything and pass students who have no capability at all in their subject matter. And so thank you, Republicans, you did this. And we need to honestly get the federal government out of school, get them out of K-12 education, get them out of higher education, get them out of all of it, and really hit these things on the state level. And on the state level, we need to do things like make sure that the schools are teaching good civics, teaching the truth out there, that they're teaching real math and not crazy fake stuff that teachers enjoy doing, where you discuss things and tell your feelings about numbers and so forth, but you don't actually work with them. And teach reading the way they're teaching it in Mississippi, which is phonics, and Mississippi's best in the country at that. Consider that. Mississippi is the poorest state in the country, as far as I can recall. It may be 49th, but I think it's 50th. And yet, all the money that the schools need more money in order to get better. Well, Mississippi didn't do that. They just started teaching. And that, for some reason, that works. Actually teaching people content and skills works. And having them talk about their feelings all day somehow only makes them more adept at talking about their feelings.
But, a cynical person might wonder if these public schools are doing this on purpose because they do know that I hate to say it, a dumb population.
Dependent.
Not only will be dependent upon the government, but will easily be misled, misguided, and swayed to do what the politicians want them to do. And we're kind of seeing that when we look at this socialism poll. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Oh, just a few things here. I mean, first of all, seeing that people that entered the UC, well, the example is UC San Diego. The UC system, the University of California system in California, is the top tier. Cal State is the second tier. So, I mean, not that it would be good if it was on either one of them. I could see maybe Cal State Fullerton has a few people that can't do middle school math. But UC system, UC San Diego, Cal Berkeley is in the UC system. UCLA, those used to be exclusively, high tier public schools in California. In fact, they were back in the 50s and 60s. They were the very best in the nation, up there right with the Ivy League. So this is very troubling. But just some other points here. Chris, I think, brought it up. The pandemic, which created remote schooling, that opened a window to what many of our public schools were doing. And it showed that many of our teachers were not teaching the basics. They were not being drilled on reading, writing, and arithmetic. They were being drilled on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and climate change. Don't forget climate change. And they were indoctrinating. Parents discovered to their shock that their kids were being indoctrinated and not taught. And that's reflected in in one of those late charts that you showed up there, Linnea, on the spending. The United States spends more per student. I'm pretty confident of this. I'm pulling it out of the air, but I'm pretty confident this is the truth. That the United States spends more money per student than anywhere else in the world. And as you saw in that chart, it's almost all. In fact, it is all. Just say it's all. It's all on administration. Or on teachers, but it's not about raising the level. It's not on students. It's not about raising the level of achievement of the students. It's all on this administration, which is all part of that, the DEI stuff. It's about indoctrination. You need administrators to enforce ideology. You don't need administrators to teach a multiplication tables to a fifth grader or a third grader, for that matter. Whenever I see these things about spending and all this on public schools, I always go back to that we didn't spend this amount of money, not remotely this amount of money after World War II on our public schools. And that generation put men on the moon using slide rules and aluminum foil. And duct tape too, And so what I really think, and this kind of pulls it right back to our first subject today, is the rise of AI. I mentioned that episode recently with Brett Weinstein and Joe Rogan. And they talked about the use of AI in colleges. I mean, Weinstein used to be a professor at Evergreen College before he famously got run out of there for daring to question a little bit of ideology. But he made the point that college professors today, frankly, can't compete with AI. That AI, especially as it continues to advance, is going to be better on their own subject than they are in many ways. And so professors today in colleges, a lot of them see their main role is to try to identify and punish AI plagiarism in the assignments that they give, or to craft curriculum that they try to make as AI proof as possible for cheating. But the flip side of that, as I listened to that interview, the flip side of that is that I think AI could be the savior of education in this country, in the way that it would let individual parents, individual people take control of the education of their kids. I mean, if you could imagine, AI that is not corrupted and actually is truth-based and not ideology-based. Imagine being a parent and you want to homeschool your kid. You don't want to send them into those indoctrination centers in your neighborhood in the public school, but AI can be crafted and honed to teach your kids in the way that they best learn. Some kids are visual learners. Some do it with text-based stuff. Some are, there's all different ways people learn best. And eventually the AI will be able to wiggle in there and find the best approach to teach the most information and skills to your kid at home. So as scary as AI is, as problematic the use of AI can be in any way, in lots of ways, it could be the savior of our public education system, because it becomes a private education system. It becomes a micro-private education system in your own home, to get past all of this and get around all of that bloat, waste, and indoctrination. Maybe we can do a whole show on that and just talk about that. But of all the scary things about AI, there's a lot of things to be worried about. I think about that kind of potential and how important that could be to maintaining, a proper education, or I should say restoring a proper education of our younger generations moving forward.
I think that is a really interesting concept that you bring up. I just want to answer a question that you asked. So Jim, you asked, what are all these administrators doing? You know what they're doing? They're implementing government regulations. So when I would have to go and, where's your IEP plan for all the students? Where's the 5013 blah, blah plan for all the students? And I'm just sitting there just doing paperwork hours after the day ends, so I can go and have a meeting with them and they can say, no, you didn't fill that box out right. No, that's not good enough, blah, 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 blah. That has almost zero impact on the student's education. So that was one of the reasons why I left the profession, because I was spending more time filling out paperwork and making sure that I was meeting all these regulations and requirements than I was actually spending time with the students or doing my lesson planning. So that was one of the big reasons why I decided to leave the teaching profession. And when you talk about AI in the classroom, I think that's super fascinating, because one of the things that was kind of coming into being when I was still teaching was the Khan Academy. And I thought the Khan Academy was super interesting because it allowed the student to actually go in there and learn at their own pace. And one of the big problems that I faced time and time again, no matter what subject it was or what level of his AP students, or we called them CP, college prep students, was the fact that everyone does not learn at the same pace. So it would be so much better if we could have some sort of individualized instruction plan guided by AI, or using AI as a tool to help these kids actually understand these concepts. And one of the reasons why I think that just learning basic math is still very important is because that's teaching your mind how to use those muscles. And when I looked at that simple math equation, I think it was 6 + 3 = 7 plus or something. I mean, come on, that's just so obvious. I mean, come on. This is not long division. I struggled pretty mightily when I had to take some of those, advanced math classes, and I had to get a tutor, and I had to go in, and this was in college. I had to meet with my assistant, instructor, and because that just does not come naturally to me. But I knew that I had to pass those classes because those are parts of my brain that I just, had to work out. So I don't like this concept where people just say, "Oh, forget math. We can just use a calculator." I really think that that's dangerous. And on the reading and writing thing, Sam is so right about the phonics. A lot of the teachers that I talked to in the school that I was teaching at said that phonics is the key to teaching kids how to read. And the fact that we abandoned that in place of these other gimmicks, it has had really, really, big consequences on their ability to read. And if you can't read, man, you're going to struggle in life.
My wife and I taught all three of our kids how to read before they went to kindergarten. It was like, it's easy to do. Phonics, very simple. And math is easy to do. It gets complicated as you go along. I only got as far as calculus, and that was pretty tough. But math is easy to do. You just build on the basics. We don't have the fundamentals right in our education system. That's the problem. Everything goes back to the fundamentals. If we can fix those, then we'll solve all these problems. Chris, wasn't the large majority of the bump that you had to produce there as a teacher, wasn't a large majority of that in reference to federal rules, of which there shouldn't be any?
Yeah,
there shouldn't be any federal rules. What the heck is that? Where is that in the Constitution?
So, Sam, I guess when we're trying to, we have to kind of wrap up here, but what I had wanted to emphasize was like specific policy or general, not general, but like specifically policy solutions. So you've brought up a couple times that, the feds shouldn't be involved, whatever. And I think that all of us would agree, but just for the sake of the audience who might not be always privy to all the discussions going on at think tanks and stuff, so is it eliminating the Department of Education wholesale, or is it limiting them to some other capacity? Is there any place whatsoever for, federal government in education? All of us might think these answers are really obvious because we work in this area all the time for years and years. But to people who are, just tuning in, they might not be privy to all of it.
Great question. And the answer is there is no role for the federal government in education, no role whatsoever. The Constitution applies a limited number of things that the federal government is allowed to do, and nothing that's in the Constitution is allowable. So there is no role for education. And even I would say that the federal government shouldn't even be involved in collecting numbers. None of it. Let private organizations develop to collect those numbers and so forth. No, there should be no role whatsoever. Moreover, I'm going to say this, and it's an outlier opinion, but on the state level, I don't think even states should be running schools. I can tolerate them spending money and giving it to parents to spend on schools, but even that shouldn't be the case. If you want to educate your children, you should have to make the choice to educate them. And the system that we have has been a disaster, and it gets worse every doggone year. Obviously, big change is needed. And that's why I say getting rid of the money that's running all this is the start to getting our children better educated.
Since the education department has been in existence, the school funding has gone way up and the scores have gone down. So, I mean, just on that metric alone, I think the case can be made that we don't need them. But, just on terms of the administrative bloat, I'll never forget going to the district office in Beaufort County, South Carolina, not far from where you live, Linnea, not far. If you ever, oh man, I can't remember the name of the road. It was a labyrinth. I mean, it was just office after office after administrator after administrator. And I just was always just so like struck by that, because then I would go back to the school, to Bluffton High School, and we had 3 vice principals and a principal. And like, that was it. So it's like, wow, how come this is not actually, so that just goes to show how, they're not even in the schools. They're just in their district office, just, handing down, all these mandates for us teachers. And there was I will say this, just lastly, that there was a lot of tension between the teachers and the administrative office. We were at odds with each other all the time, because we thought that they weren't doing things to make our life easier. They were doing things to create more work for us and to create more jobs for them.
What? Government doing that? That's weird, Chris. That never happens. My dog is losing it, so I'm probably going to have to wrap it up here. Man. Boy, okay. That is all the time we have, unfortunately, you guys. Thanks, everyone, for your attention to these matters. We are live every week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Jim, what have you got for the audience today?
We got the Climate Realism Show coming up on this very channels, on these very channels at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. We're going to be covering the UN Climate Conference, COP30, down there in Brazil. So it should be a lot of fun.
Alrighty, Chris, what do you got?
Well, today's poll is just the beginning. We've got 2 more coming out. I'm working on the press release now. One's going to be more about socialism, really getting into the weeds on that. And then the third one's going to be on AI. So that's going to be pretty fascinating stuff. So stay tuned.
Sam?
Yeah, you can find my work at stkarnik.substack.com, and also go to the Heartland Institute website, which is heartland.org, and go and look at our education work, because we have actually plenty of really smart and well thought out ideas for school reform. And we've been working on this issue for decades, not all of us here, of course, but the Institute has been working on this issue for decades, and there is a lot of good material there.
And there's more to come. That's a preview for 2026.
More to come.
Absolutely. And audience members, please go to heartland.org and all of our affiliate websites. And also, go to school council meetings and stuff. Even if you don't have kids in school, you can vote on that stuff. Even if you don't have kids in school, Pay attention to this stuff if you care about it. And Doggy Lucan is definitely making her thoughts known on this issue as well. I think she's a socialist, though, because she eats food and she does not pay rent. For audio listeners, please rate us well on whatever service you're using and leave a review. Thank you so much to all of our usual panelists and everyone who came in to view us. We will see you again next week.